Rachel Zegler has struck back, guys.
Weird.
At least her publicist has, because this article in Variety, where she basically gets rehabilitated for all of her terribleness, is very much a puff piece that I am sorry I took the time to read because it's really stupid. But Rachel Zegler is back in the news because not only does she have the Snow White movie coming out, but she's also been cast as Juliet in a new Romeo and Juliet adaptation on Broadway. So her publicist is working overtime to try to make her more likable. But guess what, guys? She's facing off against toxic Disney fans. Uh-oh. And that's the stance that she's taking in this article. And I have a few highlights here I just want to go through. So for as long as she's been famous, she's been the subject of ruthless and relentless criticism. And every time she speaks up about racism and sexism in the entertainment industry, she's slammed as just another DEI hire, coasting on her identity rather than her talent. It's not until I found this interesting because she filmed Snow White in Europe, right? And you would think living in Europe for a year, like you might enjoy stuff, but she's such a New York liberal that she's like, it's not until you have to go around the world filming in different cities that you realize how grateful you are for the diversity of New York. When I came home from my year in Europe, going to my bodega where people speak Spanish to me, do they not speak Spanish in Europe? I'm just curious. I was like, oh my God, I missed you, Enrique. Her appointment as the apple-eating stepdaughter of the evil queen drew instant ire online, with many promising to boycott the film due to the woke casting. To them, the actress's Colombian heritage disqualified her from playing the princess from Disney's 1937 musical fantasy, described as having hair as black as ebony and skin as white as snow. Now, what's interesting is that the movie has retconned this to say, as for that line about skin as white as snow, it fell back to another version of Snow White that was told in history, where the infant survived a snowstorm that occurred when she was a baby. And so the king and queen decided to name her Snow White to remind her of her resilience. One of the core points of our film for any young woman or young person is remembering how strong you actually are. So that's how they're getting around the whole skin as white as snow thing. She called aspects of the original Snow White story weird, and said that the 1937 film's prince literally stalked Snow White. Overnight.
Weird.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Overnight, online trolls took shots at Zegler's disdain for the animated classic, deeming her unworthy of portraying the OG Disney heroine.
I just want to say real quick, and I asked around, and in no version of Snow White ever, in the history of ever, is there a version where she's left to die in the snow.
Yeah. The love story is very integral. A lot of people wrote that we weren't doing that storyline anymore, but we were always doing that. It just wasn't what we were talking about on that day. However, she did call the prince a stalker and how Snow White didn't need no man. It's par for the course for an outspoken young woman in the public eye. I've watched women get torn down my whole life, my whole career. We'll watch it in the election that's upcoming. We're going to witness that for a long time, I fear. Sometimes it can feel like we're going back. It certainly felt that way when it was happening. But then she says that disconnecting from social media makes it harder for her to speak about causes that she cares about, such as being an advocate for Palestinians when she came out and said, "Free Palestine," at the end of one of her quotes. Of course, Newsweek wrote that Zegler was on a collision course with her star Gal Gadot, who served for 2 years as a soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces before making it as an actress. But despite the blowback, Zegler wants to continue to use her platform to advocate for the Palestinian people. And then it goes on to talk about her Broadway turn and how Spielberg basically plucked her from obscurity and put her in a movie. But the funniest part were these comments where basically she's like, everyone who's commenting here just says she's so unlikable. Nobody wants to watch Snow White because of her. But that's kind of the breakdown of this puff piece that Variety published about Rachel Zegler. They're really trying to rehabilitate her image, but in trying to do so, they just make her even more unlikable and seem more disconnected. And so, Tom, I know that you have a lot to say about this. I'm going to throw it to you first. What's your take on Rachel Zegler slapping back or clapping back against toxic fans?
Honestly, I think this is part of a bigger overall campaign that's going on right now that can be put together with all the stuff that's been leading up to it the last few weeks with all the X posts, the rewriting Ripley stuff, and now you had the Hollywood Reporter come out and do a story, and I think it was either Deadline or somebody else also do a story, or maybe it was Variety. Variety did it. On the toxic fandom bit. So like this whole thing feels like it's coordinated by Disney or people around Disney to kind of point fingers at these toxic fans. Because in the one story, if I remember right how it was written, almost every other studio is trying to get a group of what they are calling super fans together to try and avoid, stirring up the pot, as it were, online every time they announce something or do something. And Disney's the only one who's like actively against that, or seems to be fighting against that. I don't know if you guys got that same impression, but
yeah, we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But anything in particular about Rachel Zegler?
Like on the other hand, like again, I just think it's all part of the same scheme. I mean, she's somebody that we were supposed to like, we were supposed to embrace, and pretty much the entire audience has just rejected her.
Yeah, Brian, I think that she's up there with Brie Larson in terms of unlikability. What's your take on Rachel Zegler trying to basically rehab her image and fight against toxicity?
She needs to stay off TikTok, and she needs to get a publicist.
Well, she has a publicist, but otherwise, why would this article have been written?
I mean, it's true, but she needs like a publicist that steals her phone and only posts what is appropriate, because she is too young and too just ignorant and entitled to post whatever she wants. And when she goes on one of these interviews, someone needs to be with her, like a guardian. Basically, she's a child, and she needs a little more management from Disney.
What she needs, Brian, is some electrodes plugged into the back of her neck with somebody on the other end of them that every time she opens her mouth and says something stupid, they shock her.
Well, then she'd just be shocked constantly, though, Butters.
So, she does say some very stupid things. I feel like she's just like, the brain virus has taken over, and it's young. It's also a very young person thing. Like when you're in your early 20s, you're just stupid. Maybe you're cute, maybe you're talented, but you're also pretty stupid.
True.
And stupid people, when you give them like this massive platform, they're gonna say stupid things, and she says stupid things constantly. And here we are. This is the problem. Like, thank God when I was 20, there was no X. Because I would have been canceled at 21, 100%.
Well, Philip, how is it that there are actresses out there like Sydney Sweeney, for instance, that can, go on press junkets and do interviews and actually grow in popularity, whereas with Mrs. Zegler here, or Ms. Zegler, basically she's been torn down her entire life, her entire career, and with the upcoming election, we're going to see even more of that.
I think she's just. I just feel like she's extremely privileged to be where she is right now, and just I think she's just trying to break down the foundation of what Disney used to be. I think her coming in, she's trying to make a name for herself, and I think she's not resonating with a lot of her original Disney fan base who the thing is, if she came in and not said anything about the story, not said anything weird, I think everyone would just be like, oh, she doesn't look the part, but let's see what she can do. I think that's how everyone is for like TV shows and movies, right? Like first thing when I saw Heath Ledger cast as Joker, I'm like, no freaking way. That guy from Brokeback Mountain, like no way, dude. He's
100%. Everyone was ragging it. Yep.
Yeah. And then we saw the trailer, and then you saw that one scene where he's like, he's in an interrogation. We were like, holy crap! Like I'm in for this.
100%.
And that's how it should be. It's like same thing with like a bunch of movies that came out. It's like even TV shows such as what's it called again? One Piece. I'm like, oh, One Piece, this looks sort of bad, and then you watch it, like, oh, it just blows you away. So if she just kept her mouth shut and just let her, acting,
let the work speak for itself.
Absolutely, right. Absolutely. But Sydney Sweeney, on the other hand, she knows what she has, and she's not afraid to flaunt it, which I love sharing on X.
She's charming and she's not political. That's why it works for her.
Yep.
She's got some really good assets. So
and she's got a lot to share. She has a lot to show.
Yeah.
A lot
She's
to
got
give
lot
the world.
A lot of talent.
What do you think about her assets?
Look at Odin's.
Odin likes her assets.
Well, hold on. So I am going to throw this to Odin, but Odin, I wanted to ask you. So, like, the biggest problem, and we saw this when Brie Larson was making the rounds for Captain Marvel and stuff like that, is that you have these actresses who get extremely political, but it's not so much that they're political, it's that they're anti-male, they hate men, they are very public in their disdain for people who are critical of them. And then they get hyper political. And when Rachel Zegler was making the rounds for Shazam and stuff like that, and she was promoting, the live action version of Snow White, she was talking about how the whole Prince Charming thing was, creepy and weird, and how this Snow White was intersectional and diverse, and basically just interjecting every type of political thing that didn't need to be in a children's fairy tale, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on why Rachel Zegler is so unlikable?
Well, I think you have to kind of understand a bit about her own history. I mean, the reason why she got as big as she did was because she was on Instagram and social media, and she got famous really on at least online circles because she is actually a very talented singer. And so a lot of the clips that she had of her singing different show tunes, singing different songs or renditions of songs got very, very big, very, very popular, very fast. And so that's why when I'm looking at this news about her getting obviously the role of Snow White, which we've known about for a long time now, and obviously has been a huge headache for Disney and everyone else involved, I then hear this news about her being cast as Juliet on Broadway, and my immediate thought is, this is what happens when you have someone who honestly should not even be in our discussion right now. Because if she was just a random Broadway actress, no one will be talking about this. It's because of the fact that she transitioned to doing movies, and because of the fact that she's been doing more mainstream films, taking on characters that are supposed to be of a certain type. That is the reason why she's gotten any attention whatsoever. Because if she, again, was staying in her theater bubble, right, then no one would have a problem really with what she's saying, and no one would really be talking about what she's saying. It's because she's now in these more mainstream spaces and how obnoxious she is in those spaces. Because, again, I think about how if she had just been staying on Broadway, just been staying in that theater space, again, if she would have gotten cast as Juliet, no one would really be talking about that a whole lot, because anyone in the theatrical space would be basically saying, oh, yes, go queen, yes, girl, and would be saying the same exact thing back to her. Just like the same people who were in her space on Instagram, etc., the people that were following her for musical talents, they were also following her eventually because she started to actually speak out about these issues. All of the issues that she speaks out about and that she is promoting are all things that typical theater kids are going to be fully behind. And so since that's already her core audience and demographic that existed before she even got involved in mainstream movies and things like that, I think that's the reason why she doesn't understand why it's a problem, because she's just appealing to the people she's been interacting with for years, for decades. Whereas this newer audience that she has now been thrust into because of her choices and because of the roles that she's taken on are like, yeah, this is not what we want from Hollywood actors. This is not what we want from people taking on certain roles in these various IPs. So again, going back to what I think Brian was mentioning about having a handler. Honestly, I think her agent just needs to be like, all right, let's just move away from Hollywood for a bit and let's just let you be on Broadway, because then you could just be you and everyone will be happy and no one will really say anything.
Well, I also think it's telling that she's very much part of that New York liberal elite, kind of cadre. It's not so much the theater crowd; it's the New York liberal elite crowd.
But they're the same. They're one and the same in many ways, because it's the elite that are at every show every weekend. And I went to school up there for about 4 years, and so I got to see that group, that crowd, in person, often, and they are one and the same. It's kind of creepy.
The girl from Hackensack.
And Mr. Butters.
Yeah.
It's so difficult for a young lady like her to be picked out of obscurity by Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest living filmmakers ever, and put in as the leading lady in her movie. How bad do you feel for Rachel Zegler?
I don't feel bad for Rachel Zegler at all. You always throw me for a loop. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say to you right now. But I have a couple thoughts. First off, I'm wondering how upset Tom Holland is right now that he didn't get Rachel Zegler to be his Juliet.
Oh, poor Tom.
Poor
Tom. I don't know.
So,
that guy is just getting wrecked by Hollywood.
He's probably like, what the fuck? Why can't Rachel Zegler come to London and be my Juliet over here?
What's going on right now?
What's happening?
He's like, fire my agent. I don't understand this.
I was Spider-Man, goddammit.
I was Spider-Man.
I want to be in that new hip version of
I mean, come on,
Romeo and
guys.
Juliet. Yeah.
I play Spider-Man. All right, I just want to have a nice-looking girl. Okay.
That's right. That's right. And
I'm
secondly,
not a puffer.
Come on, guys.
and secondly,
I can prove to
I'm
you.
wondering. Yeah. Secondly, I'm wondering after Snow White comes out and it gets eviscerated in the world and doesn't make any money, and underperforms for probably half of what they're projecting. If she's going to come out with a new diss track, a la Amanda Stenberg, and try to chew everybody out on YouTube in a fun way, So
She definitely sing better than Amanda Stenberg.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So I'm looking forward to that when it comes out here, whenever. And just more nonsense of people with social media saying shit they shouldn't do, like I do all the time. So whatever. So I wish I could pick up some traction, say something dumb and it get viral,
Yeah,
Come
you
on.
just say dumb stuff all the time.
know,
It never
but
goes
then-
viral.